Today we got to talk about Tristan Leigh, JC Latham, and offensive tackle recruiting after some massive news where Tommy Brockermeyer commits to Alabama, and all that's coming up after the bumper.
Don't be cornering me. Hold up. Time. You gotta help me with that corner shit.
What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. So it's college football related, sports related. We have a good time. Today, I want to talk about Tristan Leigh, JC Latham, and Tommy Brockermeyer because earlier today, Tommy Brockermeyer and his brother James both announced their commitment to Alabama, and this has wide-ranging implications for the 2021 recruiting cycle. Now, JC Latham becomes the second highest-rated recruit in Alabama's 2021 recruiting class, giving them 3 5-stars, 2 offensive tackles that are 5 stars, going with Ja'Cory Brooks, who's also a 5-star. And then we're talking about 247 Sports Composite, so don't get it twisted. And yet, Tristan Leigh is going to drop a top 5 here soonish. If this video comes out afterward, bear in mind, I'll get to it, right? Look, I want to start with this. Tristan Leigh, speaking with Off the Bench in Louisiana about LSU, he seems to be very high on it. And he's from Virginia Beach, which is really the same place where Naquan Brown is. I think they live about 2 hours apart. And they're boys. And Naquan Brown has committed to LSU, one of 14 blue chippers in that class, right? I think Ohio State, knowing that Brockermeyer is in at Alabama, is either going to do one of two things. They're going to wait to see if they make this list of top 5, which I think that they will with Tristan Leigh. And if they make that list, they're going to try to go after him, but they're also going to try to go after Latham. Now, I would not be shocked to find out that Ohio State goes all in on Latham once again. If Latham rebusts them, then you go all in on Tristan Leigh. But the idea of Alabama being able to get through this cycle with both of those 5-star offensive tackles in the boat seems a little difficult. Now, I think the Brockermeyer brothers would stick if for no other reason than Tommy would be buoyed by James, and they want to play together, and they've been clear about that from jump, to say nothing of Tom Herman losing out on a legacy plus a legacy plus a legacy. And I get to that math by their brother Luke is on Texas's team right now. Their father Blake played at Texas, was a first-round draft pick out of Texas, and their granddaddy played on that team. And watching Texas's message boards just blow up over this is kind of fun to see. I don't wish it on them, but if it's going to happen, it's going to happen, and everybody needs to vent on this one because, yo, you lose Tommy Brockermeyer, James Brockermeyer, and Kendrick Blackshear in the same week. Meanwhile, Alabama is sitting pretty at number 6 in the 247 Sports Composite team rankings. Ohio State needs an offensive tackle, right? They got Paris Johnson last year. He could play this year. He's that good. You heard Austin Ward say that right here on this show in the Ohio State preview. But you want and need another offensive tackle in this class. Usually you're happy to get one blue chip offensive tackle. You can get 2 5-stars. That is almost unheard of, right? It happens. It's happened before. I don't want to make it sound like it's a unicorn. But the idea that Tristan Leigh might be able to give either LSU a win here, because LSU desperately needs an offensive tackle to join that class. Losing out on Latham sucks. Losing out on the Brockermeyer boys also sucks. Losing out on Tristan Leigh, even if it was to Ohio State, would really get into their craw. Now, I think that it's going to come down to Clemson, Ohio State, LSU. Oklahoma might be able to get in there, but Bill Beanboat's going to have to do a little bit of work from where I'm sitting and who I talk to that are close to him. It's not impossible, though, and Leigh is pretty hard to nail down. That said, he was in Baton Rouge last June for Elite Camp, where he really showed out in front of Coach Craig and Ed Orgeron, and they made it a point to get him back on campus, I believe for the Texas A&M game. And they've been recruiting him pretty hard. Now, to that end, JC Latham was on campus for Ohio State's game against Penn State, and he watched them take the opening drive down the field without throwing a pass, watching them ride that offensive line, seeing how important it was to Ryan Day's scheme. Big deal. Still went to Alabama. Because when you look at what Alabama's been able to do in the NFL draft and you look at how consistent they have been over the past 10 years, it's really difficult to argue with Nick Saban, who apparently is given the FaceTime. If you're on a FaceTime call with Nick Saban, it's a really good indication that he really wants you at Alabama, and getting other folks involved like Steve Sarkisian and like Charles Huff and Kyle Flood and even David Ballou to a degree. That's strength conditioning coach, or one of them. I'm fascinated by this story because I think that Tristan Leigh can really tell us a lot about who's doing a great job of recruiting during this extended dead period where, for the most part, kids got to reach out to you and then you got to reach back and be in on it. And we're getting to see how many of these kids are valued, and we get to see who's able to continue to recruit their kids that are committed. And that's a big deal, right? Because we're still at an age where coaches think that they can get a kid in the boat committed and that they don't have to recruit him anymore. No. Urban Meyer showed that his first year at Ohio State when he started raiding other Big Ten recruiting classes. Like, he would go into Penn State's class and he'd be like, you want to go to Ohio State? They wouldn't ask him if they were committed elsewhere. He would know that knowledge. Meanwhile, we got other head coaches who would get upset that Urban Meyer would raid their recruiting classes, to which I'm like, no. You put together recruiting classes by continuing to recruit the players. Doesn't matter that they're committed. That's great. But you got to recruit them as if, until they sign that national letter of intent. And even then, transfer portal today means that you got to recruit them year-round and for 4 years. Mac Brown said it best. I tell my guys, kiss your kids at night because tomorrow morning they can go into the transfer portal. And Mac Brown knows a thing or two about putting together outstanding recruiting classes. I believe it was Chris Sims and Cedric Benson in the same class, man. And we're talking about a Mac Brown that went to Vince Young, got Vince Young to play quarterback, and then managed to screw up guys like Robert Griffin III and guys like Johnny Manziel, who, say what you want about his professional career, was lit as a college football quarterback. And yet still he would want those guys to play defensive back because he always thought that a guy like Colt McCoy or a guy like Garrett Gilbert would get him over the top instead of just going with another Vince Young type of player where you run Texas spread and let your quarterback make all the decisions. Getting back to Tristan Leigh, I think LSU needs to win him in the worst way because they have the most to lose on this thing, because I don't see another 5-star offensive tackle there for them to take. Meanwhile, I think Ohio State is going to try with JC Latham. If they don't, go all in on Tristan Leigh and get one of those guys. Even so, there's going to be bullseyes on Alabama because there's always bullseyes on Alabama, and Nick Saban is fond of taking that Urban Meyer approach, going into your goodie bag and stealing your treats. That's why I'm going to talk about Jalen Milroe here in just a little bit. All right, that's it for me. Doses.